Hey Wayne,
Hey Mike, how are you?
I'm okay. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's great to see you. Congratulations on the nomination of your book. Okay, I'm going to introduce you as soon as I get my dog to shut up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I love it. All right.
All right, so I'm talking with the one and only Mike Dickerman, who I'm going to leave Lucy Crawford out of this description just because she sort of defies comparison from a historical point of view. But of my generation, of our generation, of White Mountain writers, Mike Dickerman, in my opinion, is at the top of the heap. And of course, he's going to now probably tell me all about Stephen Smith's role and all that as well. And I, I think we can probably do that by first starting with saying, congratulations to you for being nominated for the New Hampshire Literary Awards. By the New Hampshire Writers Project for the 4,000 footers of the White Mountains. And unfortunately, Steve could not be with us today, but I'm sure you will adequately represent him. Tell us about the book.
Well, this is a actually it's the third edition that we've come out with this book. Steve and I originally put the original book together back in basically the winter of 2001. Um, First book, it's give you an idea how it's grown in size. First edition, which was published in June of 2000. Was it June? Yeah, June 2001 was 300 pages long, which was pretty. That was the first time anyone had ever done a guidebook devoted just to the 4,000 footers. Um, the second edition came out in 2008. It grew to 550 pages. And then the third edition, which we published actually in the fall of 2023, is grown to almost 700 pages, 698 pages. So it's more than double the original size. And the funny story behind that is when we went to a third edition, we actually physically made the book larger than the first two editions. There's a 6 by 9 inch format compared to the other one. So the thinking was we could cut down on the pages. Instead, we grew by 150 pages because we end up adding about 50 different photos. And things just evolve over time. Trails change. We add more history to the book. We have one section which is a really popular section of the guidebook at the end about all these crazy feats that people do, climbing feats and stuff. And that list just grows and grows every year. So you add it all up, all of a sudden our book became, a 3 pound monster basically. But it really is it's a flagship book of my publishing company, Bondcliff Books, which I started in fall of 1996. We've sold over about 31 between 31 and 32,000 copies of the guide in its three different um,
And it's three.
editions. So
Well, that's impressive. That's
yeah, it's nothing else comes close to the books I've published. You probably know I've done a lot of books with Bill Gove. He was a railroad and logging historian from Vermont, and I published 5 or 6 of his books on logging, both not just in New Hampshire but also Vermont, Connecticut River log drives, and Bill's books have done phenomenal. But even all those 6 or 7 books, I think we probably sold about 16,000 copies of those, and they've
uh,
been immensely popular. So we've sold twice as many 4,000 footer books. And like I said, it's the flagship book of my operation, of my publishing company. And this book has been a labor of love for us right from the start. I remember the first edition that we did, I started working on it. It was my idea to do it, and I started working on it. And then I could see, well, I talked to Steve about it. Steve and I were hiking a lot at the time, and he jumped in on it. I said, I'm going to back off. I got too many other things going on. So Steve started working on it. And then I could see he wasn't going to make the deadline. So I jumped back in again. There was the 6 month period, and it was just amazing. I think of some of the lead times and some publishers. We literally finished the draft manuscript on May 1st of that year, and we had to go to the book design and everything like that, and we still got the book out by the middle or end of June that year. It's about a 6 week process, even getting to the printer. Nowadays, people want, the printers want a month, 6 weeks in advance to get the book in. Never mind all the preparation work. And you can imagine doing the design and layout for a 700-page book. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work. And just now going through this book and editing it and proofreading it. It's a monster task when you're talking 700 pages because this book is more than a guidebook to the 4,000 footers. It's a history. We have this incredibly detailed descriptions of the view from each of the summits that you get. I mean, it's just chock full of information. Nothing else comes close to this. So it is really a labor of love for both of us. And I have to say, the first edition, that was a real joint project between the two of us. And I don't get out hiking as much as Steve does. So Steve has really been the catalyst the last couple editions, really making a lot of the changes or revisions to the book. Of course, Steve has long been associated with the AMC White Mountain Guide, so he had a direct knowledge of all the trails in the White Mountain. So that when you're talking about making revisions and stuff, Steve was the guy to do that, because he just knows the trails in and out way more than I do.
Now, I don't imagine that you have much reporting on the views from Owl's Head.
No, no, there's not a whole lot of views there. Description, that's for sure. And there's a few of the other peaks. Mount Zealand is another one. There's not much views, but but then you have places like Mount Kerrigan, Central White Mountains, where you can see what 40 of the other 40,000, 40. I think it's 40 of the other 4,000 foot peaks from up there. So I mean, we used to spend literally, even when I was working on it too, we would spend hours on a summit doing little drawings and making notations of what you see in the distance. And in every different direction, those 360-degree views are very time consuming when you put it all together. But I mean, it's just, I can't imagine the hundreds of thousands of hours that went into these books. And this third edition is kind of odd because, again, the book came out in 2001, the original one. But I convinced the New Hampshire Writers Project that this is because we added so much material to this book. It really is almost like a new version of the book. And they, because they generally don't accept, I don't think, guidebooks for their competition, but I think they saw some merit in my arguments and they allowed it in there. And, hopefully there's, if you don't know, there's two things. They have their regular competition, judge competition for the books, which is, and I have no idea whether we'll win on that or not. No idea. A book that I previously worked on, Beyond the Notches, which was an anthology of stories about New Hampshire's North Country, that won that award. That's a book we published along with Franklin Pierce University back in 2013. That took first place. What I'm hoping what people will do now, as I think Wayne, on New Hampshire Writers Project webpage, they have the voting for the People's Choice Awards, and that's
Right.
what I'm hoping. I'm trying to get the hiking community to come behind our book because it's been such a popular book over the years, and maybe they'll. I'm almost looking as this as a tribute to Steve Smith's long involvement in writing and his store and stuff, which Steve recently retired from his store in Lincoln, which he's been running since 1998. To me,
Right.
it's almost a legacy thing for him as well. It would be a great tribute to Steve since he had such a great part in this book, and
Yeah.
becoming if he got recognized through this book, not just his store, because his store was so popular and it remains popular. He recently sold it, so the store is still open, thank goodness. Um,
Well,
it'd be a nice tribute. Be
I
a
will
nice tribute for
include,
Steve, and not just me, but
yeah, I will include a link to the People's Choice Award voting page, but tell us right now what it is so that folks hear it from you.
well, I know it's New Hampshire Writers Project.org. That's where you have to go to. So
Okay.
www.nh, I think it's NH. I have to look on my website now. I'm not even sure where I had it, but it's New Hampshire Writers Project.
Okay,
Just
I
type
got
that in. Uh,
nhwritersproject.org
Yeah, exactly.
to
Yeah.
cast your vote.
Cast your vote. Yeah, we actually have another book that we published last year, a book on collection of stories from the Mountaineer newspaper in North Conway, formerly of North Conway, called Mount Washington Valley Through the Years, is also up for recognitions too in that award. So I've
Oh,
got
wow.
two books from Bon Cliff Books are under consideration. So I prefer you vote for the White Mountain, the 4,000 footer book, but I'll take a vote for the other one too,
Uh,
because that's also a fabulous book as well.
well, now on the first edition of the 4,000 footers book, uh, it was. I'm not saying it wasn't long, but you couldn't cram a whole lot of information about all those 4,000 footers.
No,
Mm.
yeah, what we did between the first and the second edition, the first edition, I think if I remember correctly, when we did the guidebook descriptions as far as the trails, we basically gave detailed descriptions for probably the most popular routes up the summits. But some place like Mount Washington, there's about 8 or 10 different routes you can take up there. For the second edition, we made detailed descriptions of all the approaches, no matter what. That added a lot of stuff right there. We also have historical timelines for each peak, detailing history. I mean, I think the one from Mount Washington and also Mount Moosilauke, they're about 8 pages long because there's so much history on those two mountains. And
Right,
as we go along, and Steve and I are both history buffs or White Mountain history buffs, we're always finding more information that we can add to that. That's another thing. Again, it adds to the length of the book. Um, so things like that just really add up, and that's why it took so long to get this stuff out. For this third edition, we actually started working on this in 2018. First files I have emails back and forth about doing this. So it took us 5 years to get the third edition done. And one of the reasons, because, well, there were several reasons. One, it's just a time-consuming process. COVID came along, that really screwed up everything. Steve and I keep getting sidetracked with other book projects. Steve, I think during that period, he did wrote a book on a guidebook to the Waterville Valley area, and in the meantime, I was doing a photo history of the 4,000 footers for Arcadia Publishing. So we had those things going on. There were some things going on with elevation changes, the new technology, lidar uh, technology was redefining the summit elevations. So we wanted to be up to date on the book with the current or the new elevations. So we had to wait for that to happen, which took about 2 years longer than we thought. And then we had to find out whether the AMC 4,000 footer committee was going to recognize the new elevations or the old elevations. So that took another 6 months. So all these delays really put the project back. I mean, I think originally we wanted to have it out in 2020 or 2021, probably 2020. But of course, when COVID came, all the bookstores shut down right before the summer season. So there's
right,
no way, there's no sense in coming out with a book at that point because we didn't know, nobody knew at the time what impact it would have on retail. And as it turned out, 2020 and 2021 for my company's best years ever because
right.
everybody was hiking, everybody was ordering online. I mean,
Yeah.
website sales on my I tripled overnight basically. Once we went into lockdown mode, all of a sudden I went from 1,200 to 1,500 web orders a year to almost 5,000 in 2021. Now that's come way down since COVID ended, but all
Hmm.
these little things just really contributed to a long delay in getting this book out. But it's been well received. Obviously, it's not a book you put in your backpack because it's just too big now. The original one you probably could fit in your backpack. This one I wouldn't advise if you want, unless you want to carry an extra 3 pounds on your back. I wouldn't carry it with you. But a lot of people, especially the view descriptions, I'll see people all the time photocopying those and bring the photocopy with them so they can see what they're looking at when they're at the summit.
So, do you go into the stories of your particular experiences on hikes over these peaks?
Nah, not really. This is really a guidebook. It's not like a
Uh,
memoir or anything. I think we've covered enough of that stuff in some of our other books that we've done. I've done two compilations, or actually three compilations of book stories that I've written for the paper. As you probably remember, Wayne, I did a hiking column for the Littleton Courier newspaper for about 27, 28 years. So I had plenty of material to go on. A lot of those early columns, especially, were written when I was peak bagging the 4,000 footers, both summer and winter. So I relied on that. And then I also did a series of historical columns, which I turned into a book for, again, History Press on stories called Stories from the White Mountains, and also another one called White Mountains Hiking History. And there was a lot of the stuff I did from the paper. I just expanded on it for these books. So So you won't find hiking stories in the 4,000 footer guide, but you'll find it in some of our other publications. And
Mhm.
Steve, if people are familiar with Steve Smith from Lincoln, he does a great blog, his mountain wandering blog. He's out there hiking 2, 3 times a week now. Now that he's retired, semi-retired, and he does a blog after all his hikes and just fascinating reading. Most of them are off-trail adventures, so it's really interesting stuff. Steve still gets out there. He's about 4 or 5 years older than I am, but he still chugs along, and more power to him. I don't think I could do some of the hikes he does, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, I've just started on a new book, which is uh, my experiences in the Mahoosics sort of
Mm,
led me to the title, which is called The Longest Mile.
mm-hmm.
In which I start out by saying that, Appalachian Trail hikers bitch and moan at either end of
Sure.
Mahoosic Notch, and it is probably the most magical place in the White Mountains to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a tough mile, that's for sure. A lot of creeping and crawling and up under and over rocks and everything else.
Yeah, it's a tough mile if you figure that you need to maintain a specific pace.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, if you want to get
But
to a
if you
certain
stop
place.
and make snow cones in August from the caves,
Yeah,
snowball fight, among 10 kids.
yeah. How
It,
long ago did you do that
oh,
or not?
this would have been, in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Hmm.
know, Now I don't know whether with the warming temperatures, whether there are still caves in Mahoosic Notch that maintain their snow into August, but
I would imagine so. I mean, I know there was a place up in Randolph, Ice Gulch, and you see reports there every summer. And I saw this summer where there are still crevices that still have ice and stuff in there. So I
yeah.
wouldn't think it's any different than Mahoosic Notch. It's a little
Yeah,
bit
well,
higher
it certainly
elevation. So
wouldn't represent that the snowballs were fluffy and white. It was more like they were granular, and you really didn't want to get hit in the head.
yeah, right. Wow. Yeah. Hmm.
But we encouraged the kids not to pack them too tightly.
Yeah. Huh. Well,
Yeah,
one thing I want to mention too, of course, the 4,000 footers have been, I mean, they're really iconic now for the White Mountains, and so many people, way more so than when I was hiking them back in the late 80s. So many more people finish the peaks now every year. I don't know what the record, I think the record at one point was the most in a year was like almost 900 people. But I think, again, I don't have the current numbers. It's close to the all season list is about 20,000 people finished it now. So it just goes up and up and up. The winter peaks, even when I did them, I finished them, I think it was 1991. I was the 142nd person to finish the list. That's in 30 years of keeping track. So there's
wow.
only, in the first 30 years, only 140 something people had finished them. So not a lot of people. Now you get people hiking them 2 or 3 times in a single winter season. And I don't know what the numbers are. They're probably 40, 50, maybe even more than that. Finish the winter list every year. So I mean, it's so different. The number of people hiking out there. Again, we did them in the wintertime back then. The trails weren't broken out usually. Nobody hiked during the middle of the week. And we would arrange groups either through AMC or just some friends so we could team up together, teams of any 4 to 6 to as many as 20 people. So you take turns breaking trail. It was so much easier. Now I have a hard time finding a broken, unless it's a day after a storm, it's hard to find a trail that's not broken out already. So it's I don't want to say it's easier, but probably it is easier, I'd think, nowadays, because you don't not running into those obstacles like we did back in the again late 80s. Little bit simpler, and I dare say now, I mean, a lot of the peaks that we didn't see anybody else on the trail those days except for our group. I don't think that's the case anymore. I'm sure you're going to run into multiples wherever where you go in the wintertime.
Right, right. Huh. Gosh, I remember a winter hike up Liberty that my
Mhm.
friend Christopher and I took after a big storm. And the snow was up to our waist breaking the trail.
Yeah,
That was brutal.
that can be brutal. Steve and I on one trip, our winter trip up Mount Kerrigan, and of course you have the road walk in the wintertime, the Sawyer River Road. You
Right.
had to do the 2 mile walk up there, then the trail, and there's a long stretch of about 2 miles going up Kerrigan, just interminable long stretch. Well, on this particular day, it was wicked cold. It's like 20, probably 15, 20 below when we started the day. The trail hadn't been broken out, and there was about 18 inches of snow up there. And we made it about two-thirds of the way up that long and terminal stretch. Fortunately, a group of 4 people, I think it was 4 people, came up behind us and caught up to us, basically following our tracks. And they helped us break trail the rest of the way because that was probably the only time in winter we were gonna turn back. It was just too exhausting to do it.
Sure.
And the funny story about that one is once we got to the summit, well, I should mention, Steve and I, when we did our winter peaks, our unwritten rule was whenever we got to a summit in the winter, we had to stay on the summit for at least 30 minutes, no matter what the conditions were. And so that's what we did. We went up actually into the tower up on Kerrigan. It was bitter cold. Never got above zero that day. And we watched this other group. We had passed them, I think, on Signal Ridge, and we were up in the tower. And this other group came up. They tagged the summit and almost immediately reversed themselves and started heading back down. They were not on the summit 2 minutes. It's like, well, what's the point, really? Just a second.
That's the classical peak bagger.
Oh, absolutely.
When you used the term peak bagger earlier in the our little podcast here, I thought to myself, now, looking back at my days of reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, uh, as I was hiking along, I never wanted to call myself a peak bagger
Right, right,
because that was sort of the classic peak bagger. You don't revel in the experience. You just
right.
get to the summit, tag the summit, and turn around.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Especially when we were doing the original research for this guide, and as I was saying before, the sketching out the view, what you see. I mean, it was not unusual for Steve and I, not just on the 4,000 footers, but almost any peak, if we had a good day, unless we had like multiple peaks to do, it was not unusual for us to be on a summit for 3 or 4 hours, just lounging out there. I
Yeah,
mean, this is
yeah.
back in the day we were hiking. Walk-ins, walk-ins were very big. So we get up there first off, and we just enjoy the view for like half hour. Then we sit down, have our lunch. Then we put on the Walkman. I usually put a baseball game on or some rock music, and we just hang out there listen to that for a while, then take those off, enjoy the view for your last half hour up there, and then slowly head back down. That was our routine, um, and it
Now
was great. We had such a
right.
great
That's
time
a
doing it.
great routine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Well, Mike
almost.
Dickerman, so great to talk with you again, my friend. We'll do another one of these where we get more into some of your great stories.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, I would too. And we'll try and get folks to jump on to the New Hampshire Writers uh, website
Yep.
at nhwritersproject.org and vote for you folks for the People's Choice Award. Now, if you're just not into 4,000 footers, you can uh, as an alternative go for the other book that Mike has that's been
Yeah.
nominated, Mount Washington Valley Through the Years.
Exactly right, right. And this I should mention these awards given out every 2 years. They don't. This isn't an annual thing, so this includes books from the last. They're published within the last 2 years. So
I
2023, 24. I think that was criteria. So,
Yeah, gotcha.
but that'd be great. We'd appreciate your votes.
All right, great to talk with you, my friend. You take care.
Thanks, Wayne. Bye now.